Since the 2024 NHL Trade Deadline has officially come to a close, we've seen a lot of rumors coming out over the past few days on deals that almost happened. And we got major news regarding two different star goaltenders that both rejected deals to the LA Kings. Well, today, folks, we're going to be covering all the latest NHL trade rumors, as well as talking about the rejected deals and what they could have looked like. On top of that, figuring out what is next for this LA Kings team as they still are searching for goaltenders of the future. Make sure you watch till the end for all of that covered here today, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey and trade rumor content just like this all throughout the week, all throughout the year. Now, before we get into all those trade rumors, let's first talk about today's sponsor in Sleeper Fantasy. And we got some more picks here for you guys today. I got 4 different ones here tonight and 4 that I think are absolutely locks here. We're putting $10 down for 71. And if you guys don't know already, Sleeper is the best place to make daily NHL picks and win big with your hockey knowledge. And especially for y'all in California, you guys can get in on the offer. If you use promo code GRAB on your first deposit, you'll get up to $500 match. So if you put $100 in, you'll get 100 free bucks in Sleeper. And today we got 4 different picks. First, I got Anthony Duclair, more than 0.5 points. This is as sure as I've ever been with a pick. He has points in all of his first 4 games with Tampa, playing against San Jose, returning back against the Sharks. He's totally going to get it done. Next, I got Jacob Chikrin, more than 2.5 shots on goal. He's actually been pretty good and consistent in this regard lately, and versus St. Louis, I think is also going to keep it going. I got Jay Guentzel, more than 0.5 points. We've got a couple of trade deadline picks here, but Guentzel's been surprisingly consistent with Carolina so far offensively since he's returned back from injury. And then last but not least, I got Gustav Nyquist, more than 0.5 points versus Florida. Even though Florida is a little bit of a scary opponent for this one, Nyquist has been a beast for Nashville and a really consistent offensive producer throughout this entire year. I think he's going to get a point versus Florida, and we're going to win big tonight. So again, to make your own NHL and sports picks every day, go in the description and click on the link and sign up using promo code GRAB on your first deposit. And thank you so much to Sleeper for sponsoring today's video. Now let's delve deep into the trade rumors today regarding the LA Kings and the rejected deals here. And first, it came up by the Hockey Writers just from a tweet randomly saying, report Jacob Markstrom blocked a trade to the LA Kings. Now, I had already known that there was the Linus Ullmark situation, which we will get into, trust me. But Jacob Markstrom was a new one. Not only did Linus Ullmark reject a trade to the LA Kings, Jacob Markstrom did too. And of course, with the LA Kings goalie search that we've really been covering here for really the past year, we've gone over so many different names for them, and Jacob Markstrom was one of those players. But at 34 years old, even though he's on the older side of things, he's played incredibly for Calgary this year, getting a .910 save percentage in 41 games, being one of the best goaltenders in the entire league this season. And it makes complete sense why the LA Kings would go after him, but there was some pretty major reasons why Markstrom rejected a trade to LA, and it's covered in this article here. As Michael mentions, it is no secret the LA Kings were in the hunt for goaltending at this season's deadline. On deadline day, it was reported they struck a deal with the Bruins to acquire goaltender Linus Ullmark before he shut it down with his no-trade clause. Recently, Nick Kypreos reported on Kipper's Corner that a deal was in place to send Jacob Markstrom from the Flames to the Kings, but he shut it down too with his no-trade clause. And here we go into the rumors from Nick Kypreos saying that he believes that Markstrom's no-movement clause struck down the deal because he did not want to live on the West Coast. That aligns with the reports of the New Jersey Devils being heavily involved in trade talks to acquire Markstrom, since Calgary and New Jersey have similar climates. However, the Flames are below the Kings in the standings, so it would have made sense to move to LA to help the team pursue a Stanley Cup. And if Jacob Markstrom truly didn't like the climate or the West Coast or whatever it was, it makes sense why he rejected a deal, especially considering his contract at $6 million for the next 2 seasons after this year. So wherever he would end up going, he would be there for a pretty long while, and it might be the last place he'll ever play in the NHL. So I could see in Markstrom's case how you'd want to go to the best place possible. Then it goes on to say, considering Markstrom showed displeasure in how trade talks were handled, it is increasingly likely these two teams made serious attempts in trade talks at the least. Now, if you remember, before the deadline, there was some pretty big fuss from Jacob Markstrom about how the Flames were handling his trade discussions. Jacob Markstrom said, quote, "I think it could have been handled a lot different from the top." And then Elliot Friedman said, "I believe he's upset that the Flames went to him and told him about the possibility of a deal with New Jersey. He indicated he would be willing to consider going there, and then the plans changed. That deal obviously never happened. Then at some point, Markstrom was informed that the Flames preferred to keep him because he was playing great and the team was doing well." Now, at first, when I heard that he rejected a deal to LA, I was like, okay, maybe he just doesn't like the tax situation there or something in California, but he's willing to go to New Jersey, so it doesn't seem like it's too much of a problem. It seems like Jacob Markstrom just prefers the cold weather in general, which I could never as a Texas resident, but you do you. Now, there are ways where I could see LA almost dodging a bullet with this situation. Markstrom can be a fantastic goalie and has put up some great seasons, but it's usually followed up with a pretty meh year. So him being projected as the savior of their goaltending might not have been the surest bet. And you can see what he's done over the past 5 years. Great season in his last year of Vancouver, then an average to bad season in his first year of Calgary, then a great season in his second year of Calgary, then a meh average year in his third season, then back to an unreal level this year. And even though that save percentage isn't insane, his goal save of expected has been absolutely elite. And this is a goaltender that kind of flip-flops. He's kind of good one year, bad the next. And for LA, that inconsistency is what they've had in their goaltending the whole time. You also consider the age as well here, and even though Markstrom, I think, has aged pretty well, still, he's 34 years old, and that contract won't end until he's 36, and for LA, I could see how that might be a problem too. Still though, even though they dodged a bullet, it seemed like LA was ready to trade for Markstrom. They were ready to add him onto their goaltending, but it was Markstrom who said no in the end. So what could the trade have even looked like? Well, as the Hockey Writers article mentions, a trade proposal likely would have put the Kings in a tight position in terms of cap space, but it would have been possible. One of Cam Talbot or David Rittich would have been shipped out either to the Flames or a third team, as well as a first or second round selection and a young roster player. It is also possible to have a seen retention on Markstrom's $6 million salary that goes through the 2026 season, although it is more likely there would have been without any, likely requiring the Kings to ice a 20-player roster for the remainder of the regular season. Now, with a trade, in my opinion, what it most likely look like is David Rittich going back to Calgary. To me, he would be the most likely one, especially if his low cap hit at $875K for this season. I think Arthur Kaliyev would have also been a slam dunk to be a part of this deal. He just seems like he's kind of been the odd one out in LA, even though I don't think he really deserves to be. I think a fresh start would have been perfect, and just like Kuzmenko and Shranagovich with the Flames recently, to me, Kaliyev could be this kind of outcast forward that comes in and just kind of rejuvenates himself a little bit in Calgary, and I think he would have been perfect there. The big question, though, is if Calgary would have been okay with getting Kaliyev in a second, or would that have to have been a Kaliyev and a first-round pick type of deal? And that's, I guess, the big question to me. LA hasn't actually used their first-round pick since 2021 with Bryant Clark, and it's been a long time since LA's had a first-round pick and has actually used it. To me, I think for the Kings, they probably would have been very, very reluctant to give that up. So maybe it was Kaliyev a second and maybe a third on top of that or something. Maybe that's the type of deal we would have seen. But let me know, if you were the Kings, would you have done that type of deal? Would you bring in Markstrom, especially if it was for the full $6 million cap hit? That's the big thing. I don't think we would have seen any salary retention if there was a Markstrom deal, but apparently it was close to happening, and all that prevented it from happening was Markstrom saying no. But that is not it for the goaltending drama for the LA Kings. As we mentioned earlier, they ended up almost trading for Linus Ullmark on deadline day, which would have completely changed everything. And as the Hockey Writers mentions in a different article, typically a player like Linus Ullmark is off limits, but Ullmark was not. No team was as aggressive as the Kings, who reportedly had an agreed offer for Ullmark before he invoked his modified no-trade clause to shut it down. Kevin Weeks said that there was a deal Ullmark essentially nixed, in large part based on geography. What could have been a major move amidst a crazy trade deadline will forever remain a what could have been for Kings fans, who now will rely on their goaltending tandem of Cam Talbot and David Rittich for their playoff run. Now, already the idea of Linus Ullmark being traded from Boston feels insane to me, but it gets even more insane because apparently if this deal were to have happened, Pierre-Luc Dubois would have been going the other way. Yeah, the same Pierre-Luc Dubois that has had an absolutely inconsistent, tumultuous season this year with the LA Kings. In 69 games, 33 points. Apparently, he would have been a major cornerstone of this deal, a big part going back to Boston in exchange for Ullmark, which is insane. Already, to me, the idea of Ullmark being traded away from Boston is just crazy to me. I felt like Boston would never trade Ullmark, especially during the season. Maybe that we could have seen an off-season type deal, but especially during the season when they're riding high, they're in the route for the President's Trophy. I never would have expected Boston to actually make a deal like that, but apparently it was close. And here's the thing, we talked about Jacob Markstrom, the contract, the age, and some of the inconsistencies there, but that really doesn't apply as much to Linus Ullmark, who ever since he arrived in Boston has been a brilliant goaltender. He hasn't been up to the dominance dominance that he showed last season, but it was hard to do that. This year, he's still been pretty good, and in 34 games has a .914 save percentage. He would be a lot more of a consistent bet and a younger bet too for LA to make, and to me would have definitely been the better choice. You also consider the contract. He makes $5 million for this year and next, so even though his term isn't as big as Markstrom, the cap hit is actually $1 million lower, which for LA would have also been incredibly enticing. The thing is, though, for me, is that the price would have been astronomical, and already we got the reports of Pierre-Luc Dubois being a player to be brought back by Boston, but it definitely wouldn't have just been Dubois. But here's the thing, with Ullmark being an almost better option than Markstrom in every single way, it would have costed way more and required way more assets for LA to actually acquire him. We already got, of course, the reports of Pierre-Luc Dubois being in a deal, but also considering his value being probably the lowest it's ever been, it probably wouldn't have helped it too much. We haven't actually gotten the reports on what an Ullmark trade could have looked like, what the trade package could have potentially been, but it would have been astronomical. It would have been Dubois a first at the very least, and probably a top prospect or a top young player going back from LA to Boston. Now, the problem for me is that I definitely don't think a Quinton Byfield or a Brandt Clark would be involved. Those two young players are just too good to give up at this stage, but LA doesn't really have anybody besides that I think has major value right now. Kaliyev and Turcotte are still pretty unproven. Maybe a prospect like Eric Portillo would have been in the deal. I think that would have been a pretty good bet, even though he is on the older side of things at 23. He's proven some pretty good things in the AHL already and could have been a good little maybe fringe starter of the future for Boston, and maybe that could have been a part of the deal perhaps. So maybe it was a player like Portillo, a Dubois, a first, and maybe another pick on top of that type of deal. It would have been an astronomical trade offer, but apparently, just like Markstrom, the LA Kings were ready to make a deal, and again, a goaltender, because of geography, doesn't make it happen. But here's the weird part, is that we've now had two goaltenders rejecting trades because they don't want to go to LA. They don't want to go to the West Coast in Jacob Markstrom's case. They don't want to go because of the geography in Linus Ullmark's case. I don't know what Swedish goaltenders have against LA, but they just don't like it apparently. But the question is this a pattern or is this just an anomaly in this case? Two star goaltenders not wanting to go to LA because of not just the team, but the state and the area and the weather, which would have been the last thing I would have expected. And also consider the fact that we saw Tarasenko recently want to go to Florida specifically for the environment, for the team and everything like that. It's pretty confusing to see here. But of course, even though Markstrom and Ullmark rejected deals, that doesn't mean that LA is done in the goalie market. And in the offseason, I could absolutely see them going after a big-time goalie instead. You got a UC Saros who doesn't have any trade protection, so LA could force him to come over. But really, if there's any team that shows just how voodoo goalies are, it's the LA Kings. You got Phoenix Copley, who was great last season, but has only played 8 games this year, has been below average in those games. You got Cam Talbot, who's been brilliant this season, horrible last year, but somehow good this year. You got David Rittich coming out of nowhere, being one of the best goalies and goals he'd have expected as well. And then you also just go into the last month, and even though there were some struggles in the middle of the year, they're back up to a pretty good level. Both goaltenders well above a plus in goals they'd have expected. So maybe the LA Kings just found that momentum at the right time, and maybe they dodged a bullet here. Not bringing in a goaltender in this new system who might take a lot of time to adjust. You got Talbot and Rittich who are used to it and are playing pretty well as of late. And LA has also been playing pretty well as of late. So maybe these deals not happening was actually a blessing in disguise for them. I still think in the offseason they should target goaltending and should acquire somebody. Cam Talbot is going to be 37 by the time the next season starts, but for LA, they have time, and I think for LA, they've kind of proven that they shouldn't have to go after these big fishes to still find some success. They're third in the Pacific Division right now, and that's by just getting Cam Talbot in the offseason, really. They've done a remarkable job still building around those pieces and still playing pretty well. And hopefully that goaltending is good enough to carry them in the playoffs and get them in a good position. I really hope that LA goes far, man. They were my Stanley Cup pick within the first couple of months of the year. And even though we saw them regress a little bit, I still think LA has a lot of juice here and a lot of opportunity to go far. And that goaltending could be a big reason why. But let me know in the comments down below, what do you think about both Markstrom and Ullmark rejecting trades? What do you think about the Kings deadline and the lack of really big movement there? Do you think it'll be a problem come playoff time? Do you think it's going to be an issue that they didn't trade for a star goaltender? Let us know all your thoughts down below. And of course, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell if you haven't already. And share the video with all the hockey, all the Kings fans you guys know online. And click on this card for all of my hockey trade rumor content right in one playlist. My name is Nathan, and I hope you have a fantastic hockey day. And I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.